book review! Welcome back again. Our March, right? Yeah, March update time. We are already into April, but I'm sorry, it's here right now. And as you can see, I displayed the books right here. But before I get into these books, I have a very important question for you. Did you do your homework? Did you read your allotted number of books that you wanted to read this month? Did you do it? Did you sign up for Goodreads? I'm asking you, did you sign up for Goodreads? Because it's right here. It's right here. Okay, perfect. The 3 books that I've read this month are Power, or the 48 Laws of Power from Robert Greene. I've read Beyond Good and Evil from Nietzsche, and I have read Digital Minimalism from Cal Newport, as you have probably already seen in my last video. This video is just me going to rant about these books, why I liked them, why I didn't like them, what things are great and what things were, you know. Let's start with the 48 Laws of Power, because I think that's the most controversial book. When you read this book, you're just gonna think, whoa, this is probably the most manipulative book I've ever read, because I would say 30 out of the 48 laws are really laws that are talking about the medieval courts back, for example, in France with Louis the 14th or even the 13th, I'm not sure. I think both of them, and how these people in the royal courts, how they behaved and tried, you know, to sneak their way around, to climb up the ladder and all these kind of things, right? I saw an interview by Robert Greene lately. He was being interviewed by Jordan B. Peterson.
Mr. Robert Greene. Mr. Greene is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of number of books, The 48 Laws of Power, 1998.
And he discussed why he wrote this book. And now that he said why, it makes a lot of sense to me, because one of the things we've never learned is business politics. What is business politics? How should you behave in a company? How should you maybe conceal some of your intentions? How should you try to move around, you know? And this book, even though it's manipulative as, you know, there are some really good lessons in there, and I do not recommend following everything, because I don't think you will ever be a nice person in your life again, so I don't recommend it. But just reading it and getting a little bit of inspiration from it, it's very, very cool. I mean, Robert Greene, all the books he wrote are a little bit on the extreme side for me, where I'm like, for example, he also has this book called The Secret Art of Seduction or something. He's gonna talk about how to seduce women. Nice. So anyway, I think this book, it's interestingly written, so even for anecdotes, I would recommend it, because even if you just read 1 law, 2 laws, 10 laws, you can just pick one of them. You don't have to read it chronologically. They're always in this version, which I think is the popular version. There are all these anecdotes also written on the sides, very small, and it's really interesting to read. So I would give it a 7.2 out of 10. 7.2, because it's better than the 7, but it's definitely not a 7.5. So that's why it's a 7.2, obviously. So yeah, I definitely recommend it, but it's not, you know, something if you don't read it, you're not gonna miss out on anything, but you will understand business politics a little bit better than you did before. So that's definitely a plus. Let's move on. All right. Friedrich Nietzsche. I tried reading Beyond Good and Evil in 2019, and it was not a success, let me tell you that. Because I didn't know anything about Nietzsche. I've never read any of his works, and everything he talks about basically is, you need to know what he's talking about. If he talks about Stoicism, if you don't know Stoicism, you're not gonna understand what the hell he's saying, because he is ranting on as if you have all the knowledge in the world, you're on the same level as him. If he talks about Stoicism and you don't know what it is, and he says, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, you're like, okay, I don't know. No, that's why I also put it away. In this version from the Penguins Classics, they have like a 30-page introduction where they explain why he says certain things, what his main points are, and the moment you understand what his main points were in the book, you slowly get an idea of what he's trying to say, and then you read it again and you're like, okay, I think I understand some points. because I recognized him from the introduction. But even then, I still don't know 100% what he's saying. But it's very, very interesting. One of his most famous ideas were, of course, his most famous quote is, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." That's not from this book, but from another book from him. But he does make some very, very cool points. For example, I love what Nietzsche said about you have a slave and a master morality. You can find it back into anything in life. There's always people who are slaves and people who are masters. And that doesn't mean the one who has money is the master and the one who doesn't is the slave. Most people become slaves because of their money. Because once you have money, you want money to work for you, and in that way you actually in some way become a slave of your own money. If you have $1 million on the bank, you're not like, oh, I have $1 million. You're like, oh, wow, but this property costs $1.5 million. Oh, I need to save 500,000 more. In that way, you kind of become a slave of your own money. In short, I really do not recommend this book if you're not familiar with philosophy in general. It's definitely not a great introduction because Nietzsche's own philosophy. He wrote this book just one of his last books this was. And yeah, it's definitely very, very difficult to read because he's not like straightforward. He doesn't say A leads to B leads to C. That's what I think. He doesn't say that. You have to read between the lines when you read Nietzsche, and even I were not completely capable of doing that all the time. So, and I've tried already to read a lot of philosophy, so it's very, very hard. I would only recommend this if you do a lot of research into Nietzsche before you begin, or you've already got a serious background of reading some philosophy books. I 100% recommend it, but not as a starter philosophy book, because you'll never read philosophy again if you think this is philosophy. So I give it a 6.5. 6.5. Great book, but it's definitely not the best I have read from philosophy. I think there's a lot of things that I still don't understand, so maybe that's why I give it a low rating. But there are some really, really great points somewhere hidden in this book, you know. Somewhere it's, yeah. But that's why I give it a 6.5, unfortunately. But you can add it on your want to read list on Goodreads. So why don't you click on the link in the description and download Goodreads, or make an account on the browser, whatever you do. Make it, befriend me, because I love to be friends with you, see what you read, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. All right. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, all that, you know. Okay, I've said it, we can move on perfectly. Third book, Digital Minimalism from Cal Newport. This is really what is the best book ever, and that's why I already made a separate video about it, and I will make one after my month of not using most optional technology again. Just a quick disclaimer, I have been on and off of certain things for a while. For example, when I listen to music, I did think that music was it wouldn't harm me, but now after not using it for some days, then I just leave my personal phone at home. I just take my work phone where there's nothing on there. And I do realize, like, okay, even listening to Spotify in the train all the time when I'm traveling, it does distract me. It does really distract me. So I'm gonna try to take this challenge more serious from now on, with even getting those things gone, and really try to focus on not using most of my optional technology. Cal Newport, Digital Minimalism. This book is amazing. You should read it. Everyone should read it, because it explains perfectly how social media, how it's influencing your life. And it could be in a good way, but I would say for most people, it did get to a point where it really, really takes the brakes on your life and you're not getting full potential out of yourself. We are in this generation where we have technology, we can do whatever we want. But then in the end, we decide to scroll on Instagram for 4 hours a day, or whatever social media we use, and we're not really connecting. You know, talking on the phone, texting people, that's all good, and I'm 100% for it, because I have friends all over the world that I try to stay in contact with, but we should not underestimate that real connection is more important than this digital talking. And it's all good, but it's different from a real personal interaction. We shouldn't forget about it. And Cal Newport explains it perfectly why we should listen to him. He explains every different scenario from his clients. So it's not that you can always relate to at least some part of the book, some points that he makes that are valuable for you, good advice for yourself. Some points are just good to know, other ones, you know, you're like, oh, I'm really gonna implement this one. So Cal Newport definitely gets a 9.9 out of 10. Why it's not a 10? Because I didn't write it myself, and I blame myself for not writing it, and I'm blaming that on the review. So here we go, 9.9 out of 10. I want everyone that's alive, that's breathing, even if you just gave birth, you have to read this book. For real, I'm serious here. So why don't you go to Goodreads, click on Want to Read the Book, buy it in your local bookstore, buy it on Amazon if you cannot buy it at your local bookstore, rent it from your library in the neighborhood, do whatever you can and read this book. It's pretty short, it's stories, you can read through it super quickly, and it's so valuable to read it. I think I made my point clear here that you really have to read it, or not, I don't know. I will end it right here. I really hope that you enjoyed this book review. I sure did. For next month, so April, I'm gonna read 3 more books again because I want to get to 36 books at the end of December. Please join me on this challenge. Go download Goodreads, text me in person what you're gonna read. I don't care what you do, just make sure to let me know, get involved, tell your friends what you're gonna read. Try really to get into it. And as always, stay positive, be happy, Fred out. Whoop, whoop.